All right, so today we're going to be looking at circles. So here's some information that you need to know. Again, circles are round figures. I'm pretty sure you guys know that already. And some of the things that we're going to be looking at about circles is circumference. We're going to try to figure out what the circumference of a circle is. And circumference is kind of like perimeter, right? We're going to find out how much the measure of the line that forms the circle measures. Uh, we call that perimeter in other shapes. When it comes to circles, we call that circumference. We're going to learn about diameter. Diameter is the half line. So here's a half line on a circle. And then radius. Radius is half of the diameter. So think about here's the diameter, and here's half a radius. I'm sorry, half of the diameter. Half of the diameter is the radius. So here's an example of a quick diameter. If my diameter here in this circle is 12, then the radius is 6, half of the diameter. All right, and here's an important number that you need to remember. Memorize this number. It is called pi. A guy by the name of Archimedes discovered pi, and I'll tell you a little bit about pi in a later video. But for now, you need to memorize that pi equals 22 over 7, or 3.14. All right, so looking for radius and diameter, here's two examples or three examples of each. If I have the radius, I can find the diameter. Say, for example, they tell me that the radius here is 7. Well, my diameter would be the whole length of the circle, which would be 14. So that would be twice the radius. And the next one, they tell me my radius is 20. So twice the radius would be 40, therefore the diameter is 40. In this one, they tell me the radius is 6.5. So if I multiply 6.5 times 2, I get 13. Therefore, my diameter is 13. What about if they give me the diameter? So if my diameter is 10, well, my radius has to be half of 10, which would be 5. Here's my diameter being 32. If my diameter is 32, my radius would be 16. And here's the final example. If my diameter is 25, then my radius is half of that, which would be 12 and 5/10. All right, so let's find the circumference of a circle. And in order to find the circumference of a circle, we need to memorize this formula, which is circumference equals diameter times pi. Right, so we don't know what the circumference is, but here's some information that I do know. I know that the diameter in this circle is 9, and like I told you guys in the previous segment, that pi will always equal 3.14. So therefore, we know the two values. D is 9, pi is 3.14. So we go back to our formula and we substitute what we know and simply do the operations that I pointed out. D, diameter, times pi. So I have 9 times 3.14. So I did that work real quickly, and my answer is C, or the circumference of the circle, the perimeter. Remember, it's kind of like a perimeter of that circle is 28 and 26/100. Right. All right, and here's the next example, and it is how to find the perimeter on a semicircle. So what we are going to have to do is add half of the circumference plus the diameter. Right, we're going to add half of the circumference plus the diameter. So here's the formula. We're adding half of the circumference plus the diameter. So in order to find half of the circumference, we have to find the circumference, and we have to remember that to find the circumference, the formula is diameter times pi. So the diameter is 5. 5 times 3.14, which is pi, gives us 15 and 70 hundredths. Well, I got to find half of that circumference, so I have to divide it by 2 or multiply it by 1/2. Here's the work for that. I put 15 and 70 hundredths over 2. My work for that is over here on the side. I did my division. And then finally, I added the diameter. I brought down the diameter. I knew that my diameter was 5, so I added 7 and 85 hundredths plus 5, and that gave me 12 and 85 hundredths. So that's the perimeter of a half circle or a semicircle.